Two New Yorkers share an intense, short-lived relationship. Join us as we chat about kinda-sorta S&M, James's poodle neighbors, and New York City rainwater colonics. Then we find out if 9.5 weeks stands the test of time.
Don't you think that everybody has their own opinion? It's the test of time. James and Alan are gonna tell you what they say. Come on, baby. Do the movies you love still hold up today? I said, do the movies you love still hold up today? Yes, so. You wanna watch something new, but all you think about is James can't say Gladiator. Hey, baby, Ellen says I'm a dad. Hey, baby, you wanna watch something new, but all you can think about is Gladiator. Hey, baby, and Ellen says, hey, it's a vibe, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yes, oh.
Hello, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day weekend. Welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me, as always, is my favorite S&M partner, you, James Brief.
I'm sorry, what's that? What kind of partner there, Al?
S&M, sadomasochism.
Happy Valentine's Day, Al.
Happy Valentine's Day, James. What are you and Carly up to for Valentine's Day?
Actually, for this specific Valentine's Day, it happens to fall on the weekend that I go away with my buddies from high school.
So you're going with your guy friends without girlfriends, wives, significant others?
It happens to fall on this weekend that everyone is free.
Wait, it happens to fall? You plan it, right? It's not like a national holiday.
It's hard to find, a weekend that everyone can go, or, you pick a weekend. Well, it could be the four of us if we pick this good weekend. And this is the one opportunity for all six of us, which is the whole crew that, we still speak to from high school. The other thing is that you don't want to go out on Valentine's Day. Like going out to dinner on Valentine's Day, that sucks.
Yes, but I do feel like this year, because it's on a Saturday night, that makes it more tempting to want to. When it's on a Tuesday, it's like, yeah, cool, we'll go out the following weekend or whatever. But because it's on Saturday, then you kind of feel like you should. I mean, we're not. Courtney and I are going out for drinks on Friday night.
So there you go.
Exactly.
Of course we're going to go out. We're going to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Well, good, because I like that Carly. You be nice to her.
It's going to be a fantastic Valentine's Day, just not on February 14th.
Right.
The day where the flying, mostly naked baby shoots arrows, I believe, through your heart. Is that correct?
I was never really clear on that.
Well, it's not going to be on that day.
Okay. Well, this is our Valentine's Day episode.
Just the two of us together this year.
Yes. Courtney didn't want to come back on. She's been swamped with work and, she was just on for a Christmas along with Carly. So she was not inclined to join this time.
And then you picked this film.
I did. And I picked it because I know it has a reputation for being a sexy movie, and I feel like we hadn't done a sexy movie on the podcast in a while, and I saw it was the 40th anniversary, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? We'll get into it, I'm sure, but I don't think this is a sexy movie. In total, there are scenes that are sexy, but as a whole, I don't really think this is a very sexy movie. And I'll also just say it's a pretty shitty Valentine's Day movie. So allow me to say right up front, sorry. Sorry, James. Sorry, listeners. I done fucked up.
But you had never seen the film, obviously, based
Correct.
on the fact that you picked it. And I had never seen it either.
Well, James, why don't you give our listeners a recap of the movie 9.5 Weeks in case they haven't seen it?
Sure. This film is about Elizabeth, a recently divorced New York art gallery employee who begins an affair with a mysterious Wall Street trader named John. Their relationship quickly becomes intense, with John becoming increasingly controlling with his sexual demands. While Elizabeth is initially drawn to the excitement, she starts to feel her sense of identity and independence slipping away, forcing her to confront whether the relationship is empowering or emotionally damaging, as it builds towards an inevitable breaking point.
Okay. And this movie was a bomb when it first came out 40 years ago, right?
Yeah, it came out in February of 1986, officially on February 21st. It had a budget of $17 million, but it only made $6.7 million in the US. But it played for 2.5 years in Brazil, and it played for 5 years in Paris.
Well, at like individual theaters.
Correct, but this film made $100 million worldwide.
Wow.
And it was very, very successful. But it had a reputation, from what I gathered from the pop culture references, that it was more or less kind of a porn. Like, didn't you kind of think it was going to be like a porn?
Not hardcore porn, but I was imagining it to be softcore porn. And there was a name that leapt out at me while I was watching the credits. Zalman King. Does that name mean anything to you?
No.
Okay. He directed Wild Orchid, which was another sexy movie starring Mickey Rourke, but that's not where I knew him from. I knew him from a TV show called Red Shoe Diaries, also sometimes known as Zalman King's Red Shoe Diaries.
I remember that as a teenager. Now, that was on Showtime, right?
Correct.
I did not have Showtime, so I knew of this, but I never saw it. What, he was like a softcore producer?
Yes, and he didn't like the word softcore. He preferred erotica. I think my dad had Showtime, and I would sometimes sneak off to watch Red Shoe Diaries. Every episode was its own self-contained story. The plots were very, very thin. It was just an excuse to go from one sex scene to the next. David Duchovny was the narrator. Like, every episode started and ended with him getting a letter and then reading it, and then it went into the sex story. So I was kind of expecting softcore porn before I pressed play. Then when I saw Zalman King in the credits, he's one of the writers, I was like, okay, that is definitely where this movie is headed. And to be fair, there are scenes in this movie that feel like, yeah, they could have come from Red Shoe Diaries. They could have come from any random Skinamax softcore late night movie that you would have seen in the 90s. But that's not all this movie is. This movie is also pretty fucking disturbing. The relationship between John and Elizabeth is controlling. It is kinda-sorta sadomasochism. And what I mean by kinda-sorta is that John is a sadist and Elizabeth is along for the ride. So I guess that's masochistic. I don't really know a lot about this. This is way out of my wheelhouse. But from what I understand, the key to participating in the S&M community is that there has to be trust and consent. And those two things are very, very absent in the relationship between John and Elizabeth. There is no trust, and sometimes there's some consent, but a lot of times there is not.
Eventually, and very quickly, actually, he does things that she's like, duh, fuck, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, then it very quickly crosses the line.
First off, this is neither here nor there, but it does piss me off in movies set in Manhattan where people just repeatedly bump into each other randomly.
Absolutely. Yes. I was wondering, are they in the same neighborhood? Maybe not. But I've lived in the same neighborhood for over 10 years. Like, except for the person that has these enormous poodles, I don't really recognize people in Manhattan in my own neighborhood.
How many poodles?
At one point, there were two. The last time I saw there were two. And those are what do they call them? Standard poodles? The ones that are like really big dogs?
I mean, I don't know what these poodles are. I've never seen them. They're your neighbors.
They don't have a sign of their breed.
Well, when you said poodles, I was like, I wonder if it's 2 or 10. But when they meet for the second time, they have lunch. He's talking about mafia murders. Then, I guess because that conversation topic is so very sexy, she agrees to go with him to his friend's boat. The inside of the boat looks beautiful. There's a bedroom. He starts making the bed. She says, well, you're being very presumptuous. And he says, well, we're strangers. You don't know who I am. And if you were in danger and you cried out for help, no one would hear you. And the look on her face is abject terror, which I certainly understand. I would be petrified if I was in her shoes.
To say that, in any kind of situation, to be driving someone and to be like, I could veer to the left and we all die. Isn't that crazy? That's an insane thing to say when it's absolutely true.
Yeah. And then she says, I'm uncomfortable. I want to leave. I want to go home now. Correct. That is the right thing to say. Then it cuts to her at work the next day. She gets flowers from him and her reaction is, squee! And it's like, wait. What the fuck? To quote you, the fuck? Like, how does she go from seeing that huge, giant, massive red flag and then being like, ooh, flowers, I can't wait till our next date? Like, no, the thing she should say to that delivery guy with the weird dance moves and the big Walkman is, if that guy tries to deliver flowers to me again, you don't bring them here, you throw them in the garbage, not interested.
I also have to say, I only knew Mickey Rourke in, honestly, Iron Man and The Wrestler and those things. Very handsome man in the 80s. He looks different today, but
yeah,
I thought he looked kind of like Bruce Willis. So, in the beginning, it's almost his dream guy. And he's into some kinky blindfold shit. Then, it very quickly goes to holy shit. And then this is off the rails.
Yes. The fact that she goes back to him after the boat thing is weird. And I don't understand it. And I also think that maybe she doesn't understand it. And that's okay. I think this movie is asking a question that is really, really relevant and really fascinating, which is, why do some people stay in bad relationships, abusive relationships, unhealthy relationships, why people stay when there's every reason to leave? I know people who have stayed in bad relationships for way too long. I'm sure you do. I'm sure all of our listeners do. That's a common thing. The reasons are varied. They're always different. They're personal. They can change from relationship to relationship. But I was like, okay, this movie is going to explore that topic. And I think that's interesting. But we don't really get much of an explanation for Elizabeth. We know that she's divorced. It's implied that she's been single and lonely for some time. She's presumably horny. Okay, so she meets a cute guy and she's interested in hooking up with him. I get that. Also, though, she looks like Kim Basinger and she lives in Manhattan. Great news. If she wants sex, she can get sex. If she wants dates, she can find dates. And this guy is handsome and maybe a little charming, but also really, really fucking creepy. And it's going back and forth between her having these normal reactions of, I don't like this, this creeps me out, to, yeah, I can't wait to see him again. And I just don't really understand how she's coming to that conclusion to just keep giving him another chance.
I mean, I could see if they were together, like really together. I mean, I guess some of the montages show that they are, I guess, maybe boyfriend, girlfriend.
Presumably.
It might be a stupid question, but do they ever say, does this movie take place over 9.5 weeks?
They don't. That's a very, very good question. And I was thinking that because, the title is kind of a spoiler. You know that this relationship isn't going to last. But given the title, you would think there would be some way of measuring time throughout this movie. I don't think that they say it. I could be wrong. But at the beginning, when they're talking about this art show, that would be the time to do it. Oh, we've got this art show coming up in 2.5 months. You could also just have the seasons change. It starts around Halloween and then it ends around Christmas, or it starts in the summer and then it turns to fall. They could have done that and they don't. But I was wondering, as the relationship got more unhinged, I was like, does this movie end with them breaking up? Or does this movie end with him attacking her, hurting her, killing her? I didn't think that was very likely, but given all of the crazy shit that John does, I thought it was a possibility. And, early in their relationship, there is stuff that is sexy. Probably the most famous scene from the movie is when he is feeding her food. They're sitting by the refrigerator and he's just putting different foods into her mouth. I'm pretty sure that was parodied in Hot Shots, which I haven't seen in forever. We can do that on the podcast someday if we're so inclined. But some of that is very, very sexy when he's feeding her the strawberries. Also, though, he gives her cough syrup at one point. He feeds her a jalapeno. And, you know, for you and I, who are alums of the Hot Ones Challenge, eating a jalapeno is not a big deal. But some people really can't stand a jalapeno. And, you know, that's gross to a lot of people. And then he just starts pouring honey all over her. That ain't sexy. And sorry if I just sound like a lame middle-aged dude, but I was like, who the fuck is cleaning up after this? This is such a mess in this kitchen.
I mean, I think everyone has probably tried at one point chocolate syrup and you realize this is not sexy because it's all sticky and like you try it once and you don't do it again. I think it might have made a whole generation of people think that eating food off of someone is incredibly erotic. It's not.
I feel like there was a stand-up comedian I saw once years ago who said, if you're going to try something like that, do it in a hotel. Don't do it at home because you don't want to have to clean it up. Also, though, it's shitty for the staff at the hotel, but whatever. Separate from the sex, she talks about wanting him to meet her friends, and he literally slams his head on the table like a toddler temper tantrum. And he says, no, I don't want to meet your friends. You can see your friends during the day, but the nights are for me. And then he gets a phone call from one of his friends and he's like, oh, I got to go see my friend. And this is the daytime. And he tells her she can't leave. She has to stay in his apartment. She does it. Again, I don't really understand why. She looks through his stuff. He calls and says, you better not be looking through my stuff. Were you? And she says, yeah. He comes home and he says, because you did that, I'm going to spank you. And she says, no, I'm out of here. This is fucked up. She tries to slap him and then he throws her down on the table and rapes her. I'm calling it a rape. I don't know what else to call it. It is violent. It is aggressive. She is angry at him. She wants to hit him and leave the apartment, and he forces himself on her. And I was like, this movie has taken a turn I was not expecting. Earlier, when I said this movie as a whole isn't sexy, that's kind of what I was getting at, because there are scenes that happen after this that I think are supposed to be sexy. And, you know, maybe if you just saw them clipped out of the movie on YouTube or something, they would be sexy. But this scene just kind of ruined the movie for me because I'm like, well, he's a fucking rapist.
I thought absolutely the same thing as you. I'm like, oh, well, this is rape.
Yeah.
Like it just escalates from blindfold and an ice cube on along down her body to like straight up. He throws her on a table and rapes her.
And then the next morning, he cooks her breakfast and he takes her shopping and everything's back to normal. And this is a thing that happens. This woman, Brooke Nevils, has been in the news. She was the woman who accused Matt Lauer of rape. Then he was fired from Today Show. She's got a book that's coming out or came out. I'm not sure. I've read some excerpts of it. I'll spare you all the horrible details. But she talks about how he raped her in Sochi. They were there for the Olympics. And then they came back to New York and she went to his apartment and they had sex again. And they had sex a couple more times after that. And Matt Lauer basically said it wasn't rape because if it was rape, she wouldn't have continued to see me and we wouldn't have continued to have sex. And in the excerpts I was reading from her book, she was saying, that's the question I've been asking myself for years. Why did it continue? And some people sometimes think about rape as a thing that happens when a woman's walking by an alley and she's dragged in by a stranger, and assaults do happen from strangers. But when there's a pre-existing relationship, sometimes there's confusion. Wait, was that rape? Was it not? Did I want it? I don't know. I do kind of like him. Maybe I'll see him again. Maybe one more time and I'm out. There's interesting dynamics to explore in that. But we don't get that from Elizabeth in the movie. She has her friend Molly that she talks to in the art gallery. She doesn't really talk about this stuff. She doesn't really go deep about her feelings. I hate voiceover, but there's no voiceover to get into her head. I wanted to know what she was thinking and why she would continue this relationship. And it seems like what the movie is saying is she sticks around because they're having great sex. And maybe that's it, but it just felt kind of hollow to me.
Maybe the answer is in one of the two sequels, and they say it in passing. Maybe you should watch both of them just to check it out and see.
I think there's one sequel, another 9.5 weeks, and then a prequel.
Yes, it's a prequel, so maybe the prequel answers the question. Like, maybe they go to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller drops a lot of exposition about the first film.
I'm guessing no. I get it. Haha, you're being funny. But there was a much longer version of this movie. Apparently, the first cut was around 5 hours, which is way too fucking long. But Kim Basinger has said in interviews that she wished more people saw the full uncut version, not the uncut version that they put on DVD and Blu-ray, not the uncut version that they showed in Europe, but the longer version that just had a lot more stuff in it. Maybe in that movie, there was more of Elizabeth and her journey and why she kept going back to this guy. We should mention that this movie was based on a book, and the book was semi-autobiographical. It was written by this woman, Ingeborg Day. She wrote it under a pen name, Elizabeth McNeil, and it was supposedly based on an experience that she had with a Wall Street broker, and it was an intense 9.5 week relationship. The book is way, way darker. The guy convinces her to rob somebody at knife point, which I think was a deleted scene for the movie. He forces her to have sex with someone while he watches. He ties her up in his apartment for hours and hours and days on end. And the book ends with this woman having a nervous breakdown and going to a mental hospital where he basically just drops her off and then leaves her there and never sees her again. It's really fucking dark. And you know, the movie is dark too. It doesn't go quite as dark as the book.
No, I think she escapes at the end.
She leaves him. Yeah.
Right, as opposed to ending up in a mental hospital.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's far less dark and depressing. There's a subplot where her friend is dating Elizabeth's ex-husband. That to me screamed this was a bigger subplot in the longer version of the movie. This was something that was edited for time because it's kind of weird. It's like a couple lines of dialogue and that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We can move away from the dark, depressing stuff. We can talk about the other sexy sex scene when Elizabeth says that she wonders what it would be like to be a guy, and then John gives her a mustache and a hat, and she dresses up like a man. And to me, that scene kind of seemed a little ahead of its time. You know, the way they were kind of playing around with the gender roles. Eventually he pulls off the fake mustache, but he doesn't mind kissing her with the fake mustache. And this is playful. Like, this is fun. And then they're walking down the street and some guys think that they're a gay couple and they attack them and then they fight back. She stabs one of the guys in the butt with a knife, which is kind of weird. I think it's meant to be funny. But then they have this wild sex in a alley basement thing in the rain, kind of like the refrigerator scene. I was just thinking, yeah, I get it that it's sexy in the water and everything, but aren't there rats and roaches? Doesn't that place smell awful?
Now, you want New York City rainwater falling on you in all of your orifices. You know, there's so many colonics where you can just get New York City rainwater colonics, because it's obviously so healthy. The weirdest thing about that scene, they had sex, like, right where the attack happened.
Yeah.
They didn't run away. Like, those guys can come back. You also stabbed them. They're probably pretty pissed off.
That's a very good point. My only counterpoint would be that if those guys were pissed and did want to get revenge, they would assume that those two wouldn't be there in the same spot. They would assume that they would have left and gone home.
Well, Stupid for them because they wound up staying in that spot for a long time, having sex in positions that I don't think would be that comfortable, upside down on a New York City staircase.
Right.
You know?
Probably. There are other moments when they go shopping for a bed and he's telling her to spread her legs in the department store. And that's maybe a little creepy, but, still, I think maybe in the realm of playful and fun.
If that's their relationship and she wants to do it, like that's the kind of thing you'd think would be in the beginning of Act Two, as the creep is building, but now they're building this in public. I would think it would escalate, but you're right, there's this weird roller coaster where I would almost edit this film differently to put that scene a lot earlier.
Yes.
Because this is after the dining room scene, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. This movie is edited very weird.
It's just weird that it goes on this weird roller coaster when it almost seems like there's an obvious progression. And that dining room would be the end of it. And then she walks out. But no, like, then the prostitute happens, right?
Yes. And that is, I guess, the straw that breaks the camel's back when he tells her to go to the hotel room. He tells her to blindfold herself. A prostitute comes in, starts kissing her. She removes the blindfold. John starts hooking up with the prostitute. She smacks both of them. She runs out. She runs into a sex club, which I assume she does because she wants him to follow her there because she figures he would be into that. And then she kisses one guy there.
But one other guy is staring at her the entire time. It's so creepy.
Well, you know what? It is. And I was wondering if he was supposed to do this or if he was just an extra who didn't get the memo and wasn't acting correctly. But he looks really concerned for this woman who runs into a sex show, a live sex show, and is crying and is clearly not okay. What a good person would do would be to say, "Are you okay? Hey, you know what? Let's get out of here. Let me take you somewhere else. Let me get you a cab. Let's leave." But this guy is just kind of staring and doesn't want to say that because he wants to stay at the sex show.
I know they had the Times Square stuff, but I guess, was this a real thing? I just would have assumed this would be like, I don't know, Europe or something.
Amsterdam? It seems like a thing you would see in Amsterdam.
Right. Like, maybe it did exist.
Maybe. But then she starts making out with John after he comes in. Then there's a cut to her at the art show, and she's very upset and she's crying. Then there's a cut to her in bed with John, and then she decides to leave. Kind of to your point about the roller coaster. Wait, she goes back to his apartment after? They don't live together. She has her own apartment. Why would she go back to his place? And I do understand, for the sake of the movie, you want them to have a final conversation. You want to see her tell him off, as opposed to just ghost him effectively, which would make more sense. But the question is why? Why is that the breaking point and not, the rape? It is kind of effective when he's desperate to get her to not leave. He starts talking about his family, his parents, and how he sends the money. And she just kind of interrupts him and is like, it's too late. Because that was what she needed all along. She needed connection and conversation and for them to have a real relationship. And he just wasn't interested in that. It's too late at that point, and she's done. Great, good for her. But I was still asking the question, why now and why not 15 other super creepy red flags ago?
It just seems to be telling the story in a reverse order than what I would seem to be the logical progression to her leaving.
Yes, and I think it is an editing problem because when they cut from the sex club to the art show, I was just like, wait, what?
Right.
What happened? What was the conversation after that? How did they leave it? What did she say? What did he say? I'm dying to know. And then, we're just at the art gallery opening and she's crying. Like, there's stuff there that's, I would think, important. But James, what do you think about 9.5 Weeks? Do you think this movie stands the test of time?
No, I don't on many levels. In our childhood, it was referenced in all these sitcoms and movies as this incredibly sexy and erotic film. I mean, I guess there's sex scenes in this, but the dining room table rape scene is not sexy.
No.
Most of the movie, the worst part, I found it boring.
I get
mean,
that.
there are a lot of things wrong with this film. I kind of wish that at least the story made sense. I thought I was missing the film, and I rewound parts. No, not the sexy parts. I rewound parts like, did I miss something? Like, how the fuck did we get here? I probably watched one of those art gallery scenes more than once, just because I was wondering like if it was explaining something, but I didn't quite get, like, why is she still with him? And I guess maybe because by the end of the sex, it was sexy. But then again, why did this prostitute, why was that the thing that broke her, not the rape? This was a love story or a sex story, whatever. No, it's a love story because the montages do seem to imply that they genuinely cared for each other at non-bedroom parts. And there were a couple montages. So I think they cared for each other. But he's just such a dick, or we didn't get to see any of the parts where she's like, you might do that? Oh, that sounds really scary. Well, I think you might like it. Like, just throw those lines in there and, you don't have to know when it's going to happen. I just found the storyline weird. I didn't find it sexy. They're two very good-looking lead stars. I'm sure this was a good rental for people in the late 80s, for people to, rewind certain specific parts and pause. I think the film failed for me on almost every level. It was a boring film. It did not live up to its reputation. And I think its reputation that it had has not stood the test of time as this, like, artsy, erotic thriller. I think one of the Siskel or Eberts gave it like 3.5 stars.
Ebert.
I don't get it. I find this to be, mostly like a lesser Skinamax film. What did you think, Al? 9.5 weeks? Was it a 9.5 out of 10 for you, Al?
No, I agree with you. This movie does not stand the test of time. It is bad. It's not sexy. It's not an enjoyable watch. And knowing that there are people who ignore red flags and stay in relationships, I think exploring the why of that is great. I think that's really right material for a story, for a movie. It's a deep question, but the movie's answer is really, really shallow. There's one line where she asks, how did you know that I would respond the way I did? And he said, well, I see myself in you. Okay, that's kind of maybe interesting, and you and I were not so different after all kind of a thing, but that doesn't really explain much. She says that she feels like she's under a spell, which I was like, okay, that's good. So she knows that she's acting weird. Let's explore that, but they don't. So it just feels really hollow. Apparently, Kim Basinger had a terrible audition. It was the scene that I saw in my version. I got the uncut version on Blu-ray from the library. And there's a scene where John is throwing money on the floor and he's telling her to crawl on all fours to get it.
Yeah, I saw that scene.
Okay, I think I saw something that said that wasn't in the theatrical cut in the US, but it was in Europe. That was apparently the scene that she auditioned with. And she felt that was awful and terrible and demeaning and degrading. And she decided right then and there, she was not going to do this movie. If she got the part and they offered her the part, she didn't want it. She called her agent and said no. But then Mickey Rourke sent her flowers and he really kind of convinced her to go along with it, which is a crazy example of art imitating life. That in the movie, she played this character who kind of is pressured to go along with all of these things that she doesn't really want to go along with.
And again, isn't that scene towards the end? Isn't that after dining room scene?
Yes, that's post-rape.
That scene would have been perfectly fit, maybe right before or after the prostitute scene, and then ending with dining room scene. It's such a weird order.
Yeah. In that scene, she's crying and she's miserable while he's slamming his belt on the floor, yelling at her. And apparently the reason why it was cut from the US theatrical release was that people in test audiences were walking out. I don't blame them. It's a tough thing to watch.
That's the scene that they walked out on, him throwing money at her? But
that
why
and
not the dining
rape?
Room scene?
Yeah, yeah.
That seems to be semantics to me, if that's the line you cross.
Sure. Looking at it in a post-Me Too lens, where there are just so many more conversations about consent and what it means to be in a relationship with S&M. I really don't remember how much they talk about those kinds of things in 50 Shades of Grey. Really, all I remember about that movie is that the acting was atrocious and the dialogue was wooden and the two leads had zero chemistry and like the sex isn't sexy. While I was doing research on 9.5 Weeks, I did see something where someone said that the movie Secretary with I think James Spader and Maggie Gyllenhaal, that is an S&M movie that is sexy and it is about consent and it's about the relationship. I've never seen it, so I don't know if that's true, but to me, that kind of movie, sure, that could work. I'm not here to kink shame, man. You know, you're into what you're into, but this movie, it just feels wrong. Like, I felt icky the whole time watching it. It's not a sexy movie. It's not a good Valentine's Day movie. It's not a good movie. And no, it does not stand the test of time. Here, I had one little joke in my notes. I feel like I was just very serious. You want to hear my little joke?
Yes.
You know, there's so many red flags with John. And you know what the biggest red flag is with him?
What is?
When she says that she got him his favorite cookies, oatmeal cookies.
Oh.
Right? Like, if that's your favorite cookie, you are a monster.
Maybe if he said oatmeal chocolate chip, you could redeem yourself.
What the fuck is oatmeal chocolate chip? No. I feel like oatmeal chocolate chips are what you think oatmeal raisin cookies are, and then you take a bite and you're like, damn it, they're raisins. I wanted to just put something in to have a little bit of levity at the end of this depressing conversation about this really dark, really fucked up movie. I'm sorry, I made a bad pick for Valentine's Day. My bad.
I still love you, Al.
Aw, thank you. I still love you too. See, Valentine's love is real. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about A Few Good Men with our friend Kevin Smokler. He wanted to come on the show to talk about the late, great Rob Reiner. It took us a while to get it on the calendar, but it's going to happen, and I'm really excited for that conversation.
Oh, it's always fantastic talking to Kevin Smokler.
Yeah. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Let us know what you think about 9.5 Weeks, about S&M, about Kim Basinger, Mickey Rourke, about fucked up sexual dynamics, having sex with honey and jalapenos, whatever. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.